Hi, I'm Jonathan with Jonathan Stewart Photography, and I hold in my hands two 35mm lenses, both bearing the Zeiss logo, both made for the Sony FE mount, and yet these lenses really couldn't be any more different. On my right, I have the Sony Zeiss 35mm f1.4 fully autofocus, auto aperture lens, although you can control it still on the lens barrel if you so desire. And on my left, camera right, I hold the Zeiss branded Loxia f2. Now this is a lens that Zeiss designed exclusively for Sony's A7 line of cameras, the FE mount, although you can use it on their crop sensor cameras as well. And it's a fully manual lens. It's manual focus, manual aperture. The benefit of using a lens like this designed for the Sony mount, and of course Zeiss has that special relationship with Sony, is that the aperture information does show up on your screen and in your EXIF information in your final picture. Another really nice feature that incorporates this lens into the Sony system is that the manual focus does trigger the focus magnifier in the bodies. It's just like using any of the Sony branded lenses. So as you manually focus, the focus magnifier kicks in, you're zooming in to focus, and also you have your focus peaking. Now, what does that mean practically in terms of use? Well, of course, you'll notice on my right here, this is a massive, heavy lens. It's a lens that would be more suitable for studio shooting, really, than the grab and go style that you've come to appreciate with the mirrorless system, right? So this lens, it's a step faster, 1.4 versus f2, in my opinion, and we'll be able to look at this in some of the samples. It's a bit sharper. The bokeh, we'll take a look at that, and you can decide for yourselves. I think that the Loxia does a really nice job rendering. I think this lens has a bit more of a modern look, a bit more of a sharpness above all type look, whereas this might put a little bit more emphasis on overall artistic look. It's very subjective, and I'll let you decide by looking at the samples, and hopefully they'll show that to you. Now, one thing to remember when using a manual focus lens in today's modern systems, as always, is that you're really limited by the resolution of your viewfinder, your electronic viewfinder, and your LCD screen. You know, I think that the EVF on the A7R2, which I'm using, isn't quite really 100% ready for manual focus. So there's a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of a learning curve in getting this to work. Obviously, the wider the lens you use, the easier it is because you have a larger depth of field, but it is something to consider. Now, another ironic thing about using a manual focus lens with the A7 series is that a lot of what we're attracted to in this system is the technology that goes into the autofocus. We have our phase detection and our contrast detection, you know, across the screen focus points, and we're really saying we don't even care when we go with a manual focus lens. I know a lot of people don't like manually focusing these new electronic focus lenses by Sony, right? This has focus by wire, so as you turn it, there is no direct linkage between the focus ring and the elements of the lens. It's all done electronically, much like you know, a steering by wire or a throttle by wire in some of the modern cars we have today. So you don't get that kind of satisfying tactile feedback in the focusing process that you do with a lens like this, where it's old school, all manual. As you turn the lens, you're actually moving the elements, and of course the front element does extend a teeny bit as you focus on this lens. The tactile sensation of the autofocus or the manual focus is a little bit more satisfying on the Loxia. On the downside, because this lens is so small, and you can see looking at the lens barrel itself, almost the entire lens barrel is taken up by the focus ring here and the aperture ring down here. And what that means is when you remove the lens or put it on, you only have this thin band of non-movable metal here with which to grip the lens and turn it on and off. And the difficulty in doing that is exacerbated by this blue weather stripping rubber gasket. It's very useful to have in case you're in the rain, and these lenses are supposed to be weather resistant. But because you have to put more pressure on to put it on and take it off, and you only have this thin little strip, it does take some getting used to, and you kind of have to put the thing in a death grip to install it or remove it.
If you're going to be using your lens for videography, one thing you want to be aware of is focus breathing. That's where when you focus, the actual field of view of the lens changes as the elements move in and out. Let's take a look at this lens and see just how pronounced it is. We're using the Loxia f2 right now. Oh, we're going to get a hummingbird. Notice how the tree kind of moves in and out on the right side of the frame. So this lens does have some appreciable focus breathing. Well, here's the same test with the Sony Zeiss f1.4, and we're shooting it again at f2. As you can see, there's still a little bit of focus breathing, perhaps less than with the Loxia, but in my opinion, not enough that it would be a deal breaker for the Loxia. Now, just to get an idea of how much of a weight difference there is, here goes the Sony Zeiss. 702 grams versus the Loxia, which is 0.83 pounds, 13.3 ounces, or 376 grams. So roughly slightly more than half the weight of the Sony Zeiss. Look at some image samples here. The one on screen left is from the Loxia, and the one on the right is from the Sony Zeiss. Don't pay too much attention to the relative brightness of these pictures. The clouds were kind of moving and affecting how bright the pictures looked. I took these just to get an idea of sort of the rendering of the lenses and what it would look like as far as sharpness were concerned. So let's zoom in on both and take a little bit closer look at these mountains in the distance here. Pretty close as far as I'm concerned. Hard to give the advantage to one lens or the other here at f5.6. They're both pretty fairly sharp. Now let's just take a look at some sample images that I took. This is with the Loxia. And once again, I think when you nail the focus, you can really get down just to the limitations of the sensor. This is pretty good image quality. Again, all of these images are going to be online in a gallery, linked below in the description. And also check out the annotation here. Another picture here, this was taken in Nyland, California at a place called Salvation Mountain, and these two gentlemen were really friendly and had no problem posing. Again, this was taken with the Loxia, and you know, when you nail the focus, it's pretty sharp, but not overly sharp, not clinically sharp. There's a nice rendition, and you can see the transition from the in focus to the out of focus in the background. It's pretty pleasing to the eye. So really nice image quality as far as I'm concerned, great for this sort of thing. I would call this street photography. On the left, it's going to be the Sony Zeiss, and on the right, the Loxia shot of the same configuration, 1/5000 at f2, 100 ISO. Let's take a look at the relative sharpness of the pictures here. Now, this could just be an issue of nailing the focus, but it does look like the Sony Zeiss is slightly sharper at f2. You can see the nail, a little bit more detail there, a little bit more detail in the grain in the wood. Now we have the Sony Zeiss is going to be on the right side and the Loxia on the left. We'll just zoom in here to these rocks. Similar rocks over here. Okay, we have the same exposure values in both, and as I recall, the clouds weren't moving that much, so looks to me like the Loxia is slightly brighter, slightly better T value in the Loxia, which does make sense considering there's a lot less glass that the light has to pass through, so it should be slightly brighter at equivalent exposure values. Sharpness-wise, again, we're here at f5.6, so you're not putting too much of a premium on optics since you're stopping down, so to me the images do look fairly comparable. We start getting down to pixel peeping, and it looks to me like the Sony does have the slight edge, although it's kind of hard to tell here. Moving on to landscapes, again at f2, Sony Zeiss on the right, Loxia on the left. The Loxia once again is slightly brighter at the same exposure values. Sharpness-wise, if we zoom on into infinity. Okay, now we're looking at the same image here, shot at the same value with the Sony Zeiss on the right and the Loxia on the left. This is Santa Elena Canyon in Big Bend National Park down in Texas. We're actually looking into Mexico here on the left side of the screen. So let's zoom in on Mexico, see if we can see anything interesting. Pretty good sharpness across field for both. Not a whole lot of sacrifice here at f8. Final shot taken with the Loxia. These are the Chisos Mountains. Let's zoom in and take a look at some of the detail. And pretty good detail right up to the limitation of the sensor here. All right, let's do a little bit of pixel peeping now. What we're looking at on the left is going to be the Sony Zeiss, and this is at full 1.4. So this is wide open compared to f2 wide open on the Loxia, so not exactly comparing apples to apples. And let's take a look. I don't have a complaint about the resolution on either, although the Sony Zeiss does look fantastic. Okay, now we're comparing apples to apples as far as the lenses go. On the right, we have the Loxia at f2, and on the left, we have the Sony Zeiss for that.
I think you have to give the advantage to the Sony. If you're going to pixel peep at f2, that's wide open. The Sony is slightly sharper. So there you go. We've had a look at images from both of these lenses. We've talked a bit about the usability of them. And of course, it's a very subjective question about which lens is going to be right for you. For me personally, because of the convenience and the precision of autofocus, I wouldn't want to have more than 1 or 2 manual focus lenses in my kit. It is fun to use, especially in the 35mm focal length. Being a little bit wider, it's a little bit easier to hit that manual focus. It's great for your street shooting, it's great for your landscape photography, that sort of thing, and I do anticipate taking this on treks in the mountains because it's so light and small. This lens, on the other hand, I believe is going to give you sort of an uncompromising image quality. It has wonderful sharpness, it's very bright, it has the extra stop, it's fully autofocus, so I would say if that's what you're after in any focal length, I mean, you can't go wrong with this lens. It is beautiful. I am sorry to see it go, but it doesn't make sense for me to have 2 lenses in this focal length. So please make your own decision. I hope this video was helpful for you. Thank you for watching. Do check out my website, check out my other videos and see where I'm actually taking this gear and using it. And also check out the trips that I'm co-leading with my good buddy Matt Granger. Our next trip coming up is to Namibia. That's sold out, and we're going to be announcing a trip to Peru very soon. So that's on my website and Matt's as well. Please do check it out. Thanks again for watching.